Hello, welcome everybody. So glad that you're able to join us this afternoon. We're about to have a very interesting discussion about the changing face of sustainability during COVID-19. First off though, we'd like to show you a video by the Responsible Jewellery Council. So here is the video.
Jewellery has always played a special role in people's lives, carrying personal and emotional significance. The story behind the jewellery is often as precious to us as the jewellery itself. People want to know where their jewellery comes from, how it is made, and who has had a hand in crafting it. We were founded in 2005 by 14 members with a pioneering vision that all jewellery should be produced responsibly, helping people prosper and preserving the planet. Now, more than 1,200 members share our vision of a responsible worldwide supply chain that promotes trust in the global jewellery and watch industry. This vision has never been more relevant than today. Our members are companies from all over the world, big and small, working together to make sure that every link of jewellery and watch supply chains is responsible, continuously improving their management systems and adhering to the RJC Code of Practices. We have set the global standard for the responsible jewellery and watch industry, the only one to cover the full chain from mine to consumer. Our further alignment with the OECD due diligence and the UN guiding principles is a step forward in the long-term sustainability journey ahead. More companies becoming members means creating an even greater positive impact on the jewellery and watch industry. We are transforming the way we work with members to serve them better, and we will make our voice heard in the conversations that matter most, catalysing industry-wide progress. We care about people, peace, prosperity, and the planet, and are committed to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We stand up for integrity through our supply chains, in our work, and of our membership. Join us. Together, we are helping transform the world of jewellery for good and underpinning trust in the global jewellery and watch industry so our planet and communities flourish. And people continue to hold jewellery close to their hearts for centuries to come.
Well, thank you so much for that video. We're going to get into a really fascinating discussion about the changing face of sustainability during COVID-19 and also look ahead to Iris's journey to Italy over the next few days to the Voice Trade Fair and Summit. I'd like to introduce Iris van der Veken, the Executive Director of the Responsible Jewellery Council. Iris has had a 25-year career in international relations across a range of jobs in diamonds, fashion and other sectors, and has made a number of important contributions, particularly in the sphere of sustainability, which he is so passionate about. Iris founded the UN Global Compact Belgium and was recognized and fully acknowledged for this by the Belgian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Development. Iris has wide interests beyond the RJC. She has run a marathon in New York City for representing UNICEF, and she has been a special volunteer over the last 30 years for the Special Olympics. So welcome, Iris.
Well, thank you, David, and I'm delighted to be here today.
And I see from the audience we've got a very international mix of people watching us today, so glad you can join us. I'm going to have a discussion now with Iris on the topic, but we would very much encourage people to submit questions on the Q&A panel so that we can do a Q&A session at the end of our interview. So Iris, welcome. Where are you today?
I'm in Antwerp, Belgium.
Very good. And I'm here in London, so welcome from a reasonably sunny London this afternoon. Let's kick off with sustainability, defining it, just so that the audience fully get to grips with what the term really means. I mean, how would you define sustainability, Iris, and how would you say that sustainability, if you like, has evolved during your 25-year career?
Well, personally, I always say sustainability is about human dignity and positive impact, because any supply chain will have impact on livelihoods. So, but if we talk about sustainability and the concept of sustainability, David, that has evolved over the past 25 years. What I've seen is in the past, often you saw companies supporting initiatives. It could be from a philanthropic perspective or ad hoc initiatives, but not always strategically connected or also not part of their core business strategy. And what we've seen in the movement, and especially also now during COVID, it's all about really shaping the purpose of an organization and clearly going into a direction of a responsible supply chain. That's a collective responsibility. But do allow me, if we talk about sustainability, to kind of go back historically to some important initiatives that have impacted what sustainability means, how it has evolved, and definitely what's shaping the world for the next decade as we are moving ahead to 2030, and hopefully we can achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So when we go back to the, to a very famous report, and I always go back to the 1987 Brundtland report, it spoke, and it was called Our Common Future, and it talked about sustainability as the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And if we apply that to the jewelry industry, it's quite interesting. If we think about consumer confidence, the millennial and the Gen Z consumer, that is looking much more at authenticity and purpose. So that was one concept of a definition. Another big important factor was when in 1999 at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Kofi Annan, Secretary General Kofi Annan, really called for action to the private sector, where the Global Compact was born, a voluntary-based initiative that asked CEOs to commit to human rights, labor rights, environment, and later anti-corruption. Again, a shift, because it showed that sustainability is not just about governments developing policy, but clearly leadership and CEOs have to commit to responsible business practices. Then 2000, of course, the Millennial Development Goals were set up. And then there was a very big milestone in 2011 when the European Commission renewed the definition of sustainability. And it was interesting because it talked about the responsibility of enterprises for their impact, and I repeat, impact on society, and therefore it should be company-led, so CEOs, leadership. And it also talks about integrating social, environmental, ethical, consumer, and human rights concerns into their business strategy. So it was just not about just respecting the law, but also looking at, beyond compliance and going from do no harm to doing good. And at the same time, 2011, so you had the European Commission that was moving and shaping on policy. You also had the famous, John Ruggie principles. And this was a very big milestone for human rights, because the UN guiding principles on business and human rights define what companies and governments should do so that businesses don't have a negative impact on human rights. So again, second important milestone in 2011. And also at the same time, the OECD due diligence guidance for responsible supply chains of minerals of conflict affected and high risk areas was developed. So you see all these moves. And then what I call the milestone is 2015, when 193 countries agreed on the common agenda of sustainability for the world. In other words, what we call the 2030 agenda, or the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which is a common agenda that asks governments, but also the private sector, to commit to people, to planet, to peace, to prosperity, and to partnerships. And it's all about positive impacts. So here we are, 2020, And remember 2020, we, one of the CEOs of BlackRock, Lawrence Fink, sent a letter to his CEOs about, we believe that sustainability should be our new standard for investing. So you see, ESG coming up, and you see that indeed this has become a critical factor to assess companies. So there's clearly a dynamic into the concept of sustainability that it is about positive impacts. And of course that takes time, David. It's very complex because supply chains are very long. They're global, they're interconnected. And like I said, you need to look at the broader perspective. You cannot be giving a donation of a check to a good cause while at the same time you know that you have human rights abuses into your supply chain. So it needs a lot of collaboration, and that's why everyone knows me. I'm always emphasizing how critical it is to work on partnerships. So going back to indeed, what does sustainability mean? It is really about positive impacts of your company to society, and it's about really following your purpose.
And of course, now the world has been hammered by the coronavirus pandemic. So, I mean, how do you see sustainability evolving during COVID-19?
Well, I think COVID-19 has changed us as human beings, as people. We will never live the same way. I mean, it's a new normal, and it has had a huge impact on the lives of us. First, a health crisis, then connected with an economic crisis. It's very disruptive for supply chains. And what we've seen is that, companies their priority at this moment is cash flow, is survival, which is logic. And at the same time, companies have to redefine themselves, innovate, to see that they will find new solutions so that they can find new growth or long-term growth. So it's very challenging for the private sector. So what do we see? We see that we need to be extra cautious on human rights, especially on the most vulnerable. And I always like to go back to the call from action from the NGOs that was launched in June, because we see that, of course, the most vulnerable in artisanal scale mining, but also women need to be, that needs extra attention. And we also, I think it's really important that governments step up, because one thing is important to have short-term support for companies to survive, but how can we develop a new economic model of long-term growth? It will need special measures from governments connected all around the world with consistent policy. So challenging times, we see that health and safety is a priority. If you think about the jewelry industry, thinking about a consumer coming into a retail store, your own employees, working from home, thinking about our workers in factories polishing diamonds. Health and safety is a critical priority. So it is challenging, and it will continue to be challenging. But the jewelry industry has proven to be very adaptable. So I'm confident that we'll get through this, because we have we work and live in an industry of beauty and emotions. And I think what the COVID has taught us, David, is that relationships, family, friends are really important. So I'm confident, and I'm happy to see reports going into that same direction, that people will buy jewelry to show those emotions of beauty. And I think from our end, from the sustainability perspective, we have to see that the beauty we sell has a beautiful story behind the product, and that has touched livelihoods of people. And to know is to show. You need to show that story and tell that story. And it won't be a perfect story, that's fine. But it can, we always have to go into a positive direction and move ahead. We can't look back.
So on Friday this week, you will be traveling to Italy, to Vicenza, for the Voice event, which will be a trade show and a summit. And it will be the first international physical jewellery gathering since before the emergency. I think the last trade fair was Bangkok in late February. This will be the first trade event, and people will be gathering there physically from around the world. What do you think the significance to the global jewellery trade will be of this event, Voice? And could you tell us a little bit about what you will be doing there and which events you will be participating?
Well, David, it is of course a significant momentum because after, I think, months of Zoom calls and team calls, and we will have the opportunity for the first time to meet face to face, but it will be different. And I think that all of us that are coming are also, prepare ourselves mentally to, to be very cautious and careful, and of course to embrace the health and safety measures that Vicenza Ora has implemented. But I think at the same time, it's a very important sign of confidence and support to the industry, because the new normal will be this new normal. There will be a moment where we will physically meet back into our offices, back at trade fairs, where will we feel the sentiment in the room. It's all about connectivity. And so I think this is, I think it's a bit of symbolism also. It's symbolic that, we are meeting again, but it will be meeting in different circumstances. But I must say, I congratulate the management of Vicenza, because they are really, I think, thinking it well through, and let's hope that we can also learn from that, what works well, what doesn't work well. And I think that other trade fora in the world can take this as a learning curve when they are hosting events.
So Voice will be both a trade fair. I understand there'll be around 370 exhibitors showing, with trading opportunities both physically and virtually. And it will also be a summit, so there'll be many, many speakers on varying themes, and from presentation of the trend book, for example, to a discussion on the outlook for the diamond jewellery market globally. Could you tell us a little bit about the events in which you will be participating in Voice? You'll be taking part in a panel discussion?
Yes, indeed. I'm very honored, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank Dr. Gaetano Cavalieri for inviting me to Vicenza, because we will have, I think, a very interesting panel on responsibility and post-COVID. I don't even want to use the word post-COVID. What are the changes? How is policy evolving? We'll have participants from the UN Global Compact. We'll have RJC members participating. So I think it will be a very dynamic discussion on, indeed, what is the new normal, and what are the expectations to companies also in an evolving regulatory landscape, because we should not forget, legislation is evolving, and we need to see that our industry continues to move into the right direction. I think we've done a lot of good, but at the same time, we need to continue to move. And I'm also very delighted, of course, that the World Diamond Council will be present with newly appointed President Edward Asher.
So on which day and at what time is your panel discussion?
It is Saturday afternoon at 2:30 Italian time.
Okay, and that will be live streamed. In fact, all of the events at Voice will be live streamed and available for everybody. The Voice event will take place from the 12th to the 14th of September. So Edith, could you elaborate then a little bit about the key messages that you will be delivering during the Voice event?
Well, I think one key message that I think we will all support is that responsible business is resilient business. Our business is about beauty and emotion. It's all about consumer confidence and trust. And I think definitely for me, it's a call for action to say, please continue to focus on the element of sustainability. We have thousands of family businesses into our supply chain. Look at what you can do, first of all, internally within your own organization, but also understand your supply chain, work with your suppliers, with your contractors, and really look at the hot topics like human rights and labor rights that we see, that we embrace. I always call it SDG, well, it's SDG 8, decent labor and economic growth. So I think that's one, responsible business is resilient business. I think the second is the fact that you need an integrated approach to sustainability. So forgive me, David, when I absolutely promote the RJC, because you have to imagine, we talked about this at the beginning of this conversation about how sustainability has evolved, but it was pioneering leadership in 2005 when, you know, De Beers, Signet, Tiffany, Cartier, Rio Tinto, Rosy Blue, and some of the other players came together and sat around the table to say, we're going to set up a standards organization for the industry. So here we are 15 years later, we have a strong, robust code of practices aligned with the OECD due diligence, aligned with UN guiding principles of business and human rights. So we've got instruments and a tool to help companies really start the sustainability journey. So, you know, I hope, you know, one, of course, to talk to our members, our current members, but also see that I can meet with other jewelers and talk more about the RJC and what we're doing. And, you know, finally, partnerships. We're working very closely with the UN Global Compact. As you know, in September 2019, we launched an SDG action platform where we're working on training, education, awareness, how companies, through the implementation of the Code of Practices of the RJC, contribute to the bigger vision of the world. I am looking forward to talk about partnerships with, you know, with CIPJO, with the World Diamond Council, you know, with other organizations that are present. And I think that the final message will be about ESG. I mean, the future is about environmental, social, and governance frameworks. And again, the RJC is working very closely in consultation with other organizations on that. So, want to understand the sentiment of our members, want to see, you know, how we as RJC also can perform always better, talk to other trade organizations, and look at collaborations to contribute to consumer confidence in our industry.
So what are your top priorities within the Responsible Jewellery Council now in the midst of this crisis?
Well, first of all, my team. I'm very, very proud of my team, David. We have a global team. We have representation in the US with Brandy Dello, in India, Kinjal Shah. We've got a great team in London. We have in Geneva, we have Dr. Nawalite Hussein. So we've got, you know, people from all around the world, and, you know, their well-being and their mental well-being and being able to perform and to serve our members has been a priority. Together with our Members First strategy, I think just before the COVID, we had already focused on a new Members First strategy, you know, updated toolkits, more support to members, one-on-one sessions, and the team has worked diligently on understanding the issues of our members, helping them through these tough times. And of course, you can imagine auditors cannot go on site. Also, you know, we had very different consultations with our accredited auditors on how can we support our members and how can we keep the credibility of the implementation of the standard as a priority for the organization. So I would say priorities is my team and of course our members. 2005, we had 14 members. David, today we have 1,280 members. You know, we want to retain them, embrace them, help them on the journey of continuous improvement.
And those members are at all levels of the supply chain, aren't they? From multinationals to designers to miners. Could you tell us a little bit about the cross-section of membership that you have?
Well, we have representation, as you said, all over from mining to retail. Of course, since that we launched a new code of practices at the OECD in 2019, we have also colored gemstones included. So we definitely want to grow membership in that area. And 60% of our membership is small enterprises. And recently, you know, we had also the privilege to launch a partnership with the Plum Club. So this is also a big milestone in the US, where they ask their members to become RJC certified. And I believe in that model. I think it always needs leadership, you know, to bring in new leaders. What I've seen speaking to many of the CEOs during the COVID is that leadership and commitment to responsible business practices is the only way forward to drive consumer confidence. because the consumer wants it, and that will only continue to be so. So I think in that context, we're in a good space.
And what steps are you taking now at RJC to advise and to safeguard your existing members through this crisis?
Support by my team. We have a great membership engagement team, and they continue to have dialogues and meaningful conversations every day with the members. It's very personal. They're very personal engagement relationships. Also developing much more practical tools, guidance, education material. I would invite you to go to our website. We recently launched our new OECD RJC due diligence guidance, practical tools. So we continue to listen to our members, and then with the experts develop practical tools. And at the same time, the RJC is going through a strong digital transformation strategy, again, to support our members better. But yeah, we acknowledge that they're tough times, and what we are here to support them in delivering the message of trust and credibility.
And how do you impress upon potential new members of the Responsible Jewellery Council the importance of sustainability and having responsible management practices right along the supply chain?
Well, David, we don't want to impress. We want to do our best to serve our current members better, and that, you know, those leaders will also reference, and we see that a lot. For us, membership is also about quality. At the end of the day, the RJC is, you know, the leading standards organization. We're an organization of integrity. So when companies come to us, it already shows that those leaders are very committed to make a difference, and that they want to start the journey of sustainability, and also that they are willing to indeed have independent accredited auditors, you know, step in to look at their management practices. And I think the good thing is what we see more and more is that it's not about just the audit momentum. The fact is companies become member of the RJC, and they will do an internal risk assessment. They will understand, you know, what the priorities are. They will look at their management systems, and it's a learning curve. And they will see from the audit, you know, what am I doing well? What can I do better? And they will continue to improve their systems. And that's what we want. You know, we want companies to step up and year by year improve their management systems into the supply chain, and work collectively on driving consumer confidence, because that's it. We're an interconnected supply chain.
So could you elaborate a little bit about the, if you like, the application process for membership of the RJC for companies and say even jewellery designers who wish to join? What kind of steps do they go through? How does the audit process work? How long does the process take? And particularly now, what are the complications due to COVID in all of this? Because obviously people can't travel as easily as they used to be able to do on site.
Well, first of all, I'm not the membership engagement expert. I've got a great team. And I think some of them are on the line. So I'm happy that they will give more details. But the point is that a company will, first of all, apply to the RJC. They will fill in, you know, a complete application. And often that will be followed up, you know, with a call. We'll then have an, you know, an integrity check. And then what we will do is we will really talk the new member through the journey of certification. They will have time to use the tools to understand, you know, the risks in their supply chain, to understand where they are. They will look at the code of practices. The member itself will then choose an independent accredited auditor. That auditor will come on site. It will give a report, you know, where the member stands, and based on that report, certification will be granted or not granted. And I think that what we see is that, you know, during COVID, and that's been very positive, is that we have received, you know, many applications, David, and that gives us, you know, confidence, and it's also and it also shows that even in very tough times, that that commitment to responsible business practices, you know, can be a priority for many leaders.
So how can you proactively boost membership against such a tough economic backdrop? I mean, many companies presumably will be struggling to find spare resources to say spend upon membership of RJC. So how do you get the message across that it's important that people and companies do adhere to the higher standards?
Well, first of all, it is what the world has changed, David, and the world has changed to more transparency. Trust is the new currency. And we know that companies that implement the code of practices, contribute to that consumer confidence. So it's really a business case. And I think at the same time, what we try to do with our team is work very closely with our current members, work very closely with trade associations, with local networks, also with the centers. If you think about the AWC, Antwerp Royal Diamond Center, or if you think about the BGOP in France, or we talk with the WGA in the US. I mean, there's so many organizations that we are working with. And a lot is also word of mouth. So I think first it's the quality of service that we give. Second of all, it can be often also, commercial relationships that will require it in a supplier agreement. But I think that's the good news. More and more we just see that, companies are stepping up because the leadership at the top says, well, it makes a lot of sense. I want to start a journey. I need a framework. That framework needs to fit into an evolving regulatory landscape. The code of practices is very robust. And this will help us integrate sustainability at the heart of my operations. And it's also about reputation, because you can build up a reputation, but it can disappear overnight.
So, Edith, I just want to ask you one more question before we go to the Q&A. So I do invite viewers to submit any questions. I see we have a few questions in already, which is great. But my last question to you before the Q&A is I know that gender equality has been a great passion of yours over your career. Can you just give us a few examples of the steps you've been taking or the action you have taken to strengthen the position of women in the global jewellery trade?
Well, first of all, the reality is that and I'm not talking about the jewelry industry, I'm talking about the whole world, hasn't done enough on SDG 5, gender equality. And I always go back to the World Economic Forum's 2020 Global Gender Report, that it will take 257 years to close the economic gender gap. So that's disastrous, David, and that needs collective action, and we all, need to contribute to that. And I also want to emphasize the fact that because of COVID-19, that women are hit the hardest. And, think about artisanal scale mining, but also think about, women on manufacturing sites or under subcontracting. At the same time, women often are the caretakers, still take care of the children. I mean, that's based on facts. And then there's domestic violence. So there are lots of, issues that are hitting much more harder because of COVID. So when I talk about gender, I always say, well, first look at your own organization, what you're doing. And, within my team, we have signed the Women Empowerment Principles. These are principles, how you implement gender into an organization. I can say, I have a very diversified team, very talented, and I embrace that myself. And I think it's super important that you're able to let your team, women and men, evolve, train, educate, etc. But I think the biggest opportunity lies also throughout our membership to, first of all, advocate on gender, what they can do, how you can develop a culture on gender equality, how you can embrace the broader agenda of diversity and inclusion. And in that context, we launched a webinar with the UN Global Compact on gender in the jewelry industry in March. And we will continue to work on that topic, on guidance, webinars, and share more expertise. But I think at the end of the day, it's about action. And it's great, to see some of the projects that are also happening in our industry on gender. So I think, yes, we have a long way to go, but again, we're taking the right steps.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a question from Joanna Park-Tonks, who asks, with regards to sustainability, which companies in the jewellery sector model best practice in your opinion? Could you give a few examples? How are you measuring this impact, and how have they demonstrated this to their customers?
Well, thank you. I think that's a very good question. And please forgive me that I'm not going to name any specific companies, because I have 1,280 members that I deeply care about. And I think, you know, please check our progress report where we have some of them mentioned. But what is really important, if a company, you know, what is a company that is embracing sustainability, is that they have systems into place. And it starts with leadership at the top, you know, a very strong value system, and then internally having the management systems to look at components like labor rights. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that a company invests in a certain region in the world, and that government policy gives certain minimum wages. You know, what is a company doing beyond that? You know, what's the living, you know, how is the living index wage evolving? Can, you know, your employees bring their kids, you know, can they allow their kids to go to school? Are there health and safety measures? That could be labor, but it's also about, you know, environmental impact. You know, what are you doing on climate? What are you doing on waste? What are you doing on energy efficiency? How are you developing products, packaging that's, you know, that's carbon neutral? It also requires innovation. So I think sustainability is about leadership at the top. It's about a process of continuous improvement, and it's about an integrated framework. And that's why the Code of Practices is so relevant, because if you look at the different chapters in the Code of Practices, you can really tackle one chapter at a time to start that journey of integrating it into your operations.
Joanna is also asking, where can one find an integrated sustainability framework document as it relates to the jewellery industry? Is there some sort of written guidance on a framework for sustainability out there?
Well, I think the Code of Practices is a very good framework. I do understand the point, Joanna, on reporting. And reporting, there are many different frameworks out there. You know, I think one of them very well known is the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. But just for your information, the RJC has launched an SDG task force, so Sustainable Development Goals Task Force. And one of the key topics that is being discussed is how we can help companies show progress. So we're going to look at some key areas of impact and take already indicators that exist, and that can be on human rights, on labor rights, on, you know, impact, environment, etc. And then see that companies year by year can measure and show progress. And I'm happy that if you send a message to our comms team to share more information at a later stage, because the document will go into a consultation round in October, so then it will be in the public domain. But you're very right. I always say to know is to show. So you need to show progress.
So it is
Sorry,
a question
David,
from...
just one more point, because I think it's a really good question, Joanna. And I always take the SDGs as a bigger framework. So you've got the global framework, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And if you look at the Code of Practices of the RJC, you will see that every section reflects an interconnectivity with the goals. And I think that's also where we are now helping our members show how they can deliver progress towards the more aspirational agenda of the world.
We have a question from Tony Brook in Bangkok. He says, this is an old concern, but what are the latest steps from the RJC as to being able to facilitate bringing on board old stock of gems and jewellery worldwide to be responsibly sourced?
David, will you be so kind to repeat the question?
Yeah, so Tony Brook is asking, it's an old concern, but what are the latest steps from the RJC in terms of being able to facilitate bringing on board old stock of gems and jewellery worldwide to be responsibly sourced? So I guess what Tony is meaning is old stock that was mined many years ago that is circulating in the trade. How can one be sure that that can be responsibly sourced, or what safeguards can one take so that one can be sure that it could be responsibly sourced? Obviously, with new production, you can track it from mine to finger using all kinds of mechanisms like blockchain in theory for certain types of gems. But for the old inventory of gems that is moving around the world trade, how can you be sure that could be called responsibly sourced?
Well, David, we at the RJC, we have set up a colored gemstones task force and I will definitely bring that question to the table to the experts team. And I'm happy to get back to Tony on that.
Yeah, well, I have Tony's details, so I can provide those for you.
But I think it's a good question, but I'm happy to take it offline.
Yeah.
Because
there's a huge
focus.
Yeah. There's a huge focus clearly in the trade of coloured gemstones that they should be responsibly sourced as much as possible. So I guess it boils down to defining how that can work. Saul Rubins is asking, how are audits being carried out by the RJC during the pandemic?
Well, again, good question, Saul. And I'm very happy that he's joining, because Saul has been a passionate supporter of the RJC, and we thank him for his commitment. So when you go to the website of the RJC, you will also find our special audit guidance during these exceptional times. So the first thing that we did, of course, is we gave extra time to our member companies to be able to, to be audited, because practically, of course, auditors couldn't go on site. And now we have developed, in collaboration with the governance process of the RJC, the Assurance Committee, specific audit guidance of, what is possible remotely and non-remotely. And some of the documents are on the website, Saul, but happy also after this call to send that to you. But yes, we have developed flexible guidance, but at the same time we're very cautious, on protecting the credibility of the system and of the implementation of the standard. But this has been done in full consultation with the accredited auditors and the Assurance Committee of the RJC.
A comment from Mariam Zaman, who says, I think the question relating to coloured gemstones and old stock is relevant to everybody, so please do let us know. And then Joanna is also, I think this will be our last question today. Could you possibly comment on your understanding on how sustainability relates to lab-grown diamonds? And what is important to focus on in this somewhat controversial discussion?
Well, Joanna, first of all, for me, it's not a controversial discussion, natural diamonds or lab-grown diamonds. It is a consumer's choice what they will buy. What is really important is when companies talk about products or talk about diamonds, that there's correct disclosure, because that's product integrity. So if I go into a boutique and I want to buy a lab-grown diamond, that's a choice. But then clearly it should be a lab-grown diamond. If it is about a natural diamond, the same. So disclosure is essential. That's about product integrity. And a lot of reports have been written, about what is sustainable and what is not sustainable and climate neutral. I don't want to go into that detail, but what I do want to say is that I'm very proud, to work for the RJC, and I believe that sustainability is about changing lives, and sustainability is about impact on the ground. And if we see what we have done, and I think, for example, Botswana is a great example of nation building with diamonds. I think that is really what sustainability is about, changing lives and creating positive impact for the next generation.
Iris, thank you so much for joining us today and taking part in this discussion. The message has come through loud and clear that sustainability in whatever form that it evolves is increasingly necessary in the global jewellery and watches trade, and that responsible management of the supply chain is critically important, particularly during this crisis that we're all living through today. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. The replay of this webinar will be available within the next 2 days on the Jewellery Outlook YouTube account. I look forward to being with Iris at the Voice event in Italy over the next few days, and to taking part in some very interesting discussions there. It's great news for the trade that there will be this physical event now launching after this long period of lockdown. So a great motivational booster for the international jewellery trade. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Stay safe and stay alert.
Thank
Bye.
you.